This is an activity we do for Chapter 4 and for the Level 4 speech. It's best done in a group, but for those of you who have missed the group discussion, I want to give you the basic content and talk about how we processed it in the group. It starts with a stack of quote cards, and each group got a few cards, and they had to select the quote they wanted to use as their prompt. I gave an example using this card. This is a quote by Thomas Jefferson. "I hold it that a little rebellion now and then is a good thing, as necessary in the political world as storms in the physical." And as I read this and I think about what speech I can make prompted by this, I see 2 points: the political world and the physical world. So I could have a topical pattern with 2 points, the political world and the physical world. And I could develop those with what are characteristics of the storm that we might see in each of those. But as I started thinking about what are the characteristics of a storm, I really liked those points better. And so I decided I would develop my outline in a topical pattern, talking about the characteristics of a storm. And I have 3 characteristics I'm going to look at. And then each one of those, I will start with the physical, and then compare that to the analogy or the metaphor of a political storm. And so the things about a storm that I think of when we talk about a storm, the first one is that storms make us wake up and pay attention to what's going on. And a good example of this is when a tornado is coming, you hear the tornado warnings go off, the sirens. Or perhaps you hear your weather alert radio, or you get a weather alert on your phone saying thunderstorms are coming and there could be tornadoes. So all of that goes under the idea of physical storms make us wake up. Political storms also have this effect. And one of the biggest political storms in recent years, or the lifetime of many of us, would be 9/11, when the terrorists flew planes into the Twin Towers and into the Pentagon, and that was a wake-up call for the country. And many people decided, hey, something's going on, we need to be paying attention. And so we had the physical example, the political. The second characteristic is that storms will often make a group of people unite. If you see a hurricane coming, a lot of times you see footage of people on the Florida coast or the Gulf Coast, and they're running around helping each other put plywood on their windows and gather out the dogs and the pets and the animals in the neighborhood. And then after the storm's over, they're helping each other out and pulling debris out of their yards and helping people that have been trapped because their house collapsed or something. So communities unite and pull together during a storm. And that's a physical storm, but also under a political storm, going back to 9/11, afterwards there was an incredible sense of unity in New York City. People from all over the city came out to help with the cleanup and the rescue efforts. People all over the country sent food, supplies, donations to help out with that effort. So the country united. And then the last characteristic is that storms cause change. I think of Hurricane Katrina when it hit New Orleans. It was probably one of the biggest recent storms. If you go back to hurricane in the early 1900s that hit Galveston, but that's a little too far back. Hurricane Katrina was in the last 20, 40 years, and a lot of people lived through that and saw the changes in New Orleans. The city after the storm, the levees had to be rebuilt because it flooded so much. A lot of the buildings had to be replaced. A lot of businesses had to be rebuilt, and many of them built further away from the ocean because they wanted to be safer. You see that on the East Coast as hurricanes hit the East Coast recently. A lot of the rebuilding Now it's new and improved, and it's also further from the ocean a lot of times, or it's built in a way that will withstand what goes on in a hurricane. So, physical change, political change, again, going back to 9/11, just in air travel. I remember taking an international trip before 9/11, sitting in the last row of the smoking section, because back then people could smoke on airplanes. You could have cigarette lighters, you could have nail clippers, pocket knives, probably even guns, because people didn't check you for those things. It wasn't the way we did business. After 9/11, things changed. Airport security, the TSA was created to monitor all that, and that's just one aspect of life in the United States. So storms cause change. So I have built the body of my speech around these 3 points, and I've developed each point with some subpoints so I can explain it to my audience. If you look in level 4, or in chapter 4, you see moving toward an introduction, body, and a conclusion. So in our introduction, we need an opening attention getter and a preview. In our conclusion, we need a review and a closing attention getter. The preview can't be created until after we have our main points, but now we know our preview will be that storms help us to wake up, unite, and change. And our review will be the same thing, only it comes after the speech. 1, 2, 3, and I share those points. For an opening attention getter, I think it will open up with the quote itself. And for the closing attention getter, I might tell a story. For instance, a story about taking my children to Joplin after the tornadoes wiped out about half of that town, and helping with the cleanup effort and how that impacted their lives. So that might be my closing attention getter. So now I have an outline. Normally, I have groups split up and create their own outlines. Then we share those with each other, and I'll ask specific questions. So what are the main points? What we usually see is if somebody had a preview, labeled their main points clearly, and a review, the audience can remember them. But if you go straight from the attention getter to the first point, a lot of times the audience can't remember what the main points were. And if you can't remember the main points, you can't distinguish what is the pattern. The main points: wake up, unite, change. This is a topical pattern. The only thing that unites these are how they relate to storms, which is the topic of the speech. The topic of the speech would come out more clearly in the specific purpose. I want to inform my audience about physical and political storms. Central idea: I want my audience to understand that storms can have an impact on society and on culture, especially political storms. Or I want my audience to understand that political storms can change our culture. That might be the central idea. Some of the others we might see as you look at some of the quotes for prompts. How would you develop these? Those who write don't shoot. Those who shoot don't write. I might give you 3 examples of writers. That would be a topical pattern. I could talk about how I agree or disagree with this. Always do right. This will gratify some people and astonish the rest. Who does it gratify and why? Who does it astonish and why? Topical pattern there. These are the times that try men's souls. What ways are our souls tried at this point? Maybe because of coronavirus, maybe because of rioting and racial injustice. That would be a topical pattern. Maybe I'm talking about different times that tried men's souls. In this country, the Revolutionary War, the Civil War, Vietnam War. That would be a chronological pattern. On the whole, I'd rather be in Philadelphia. Not literally, but just the idea that I'd rather be somewhere else than here. So where else would I rather be? That could be a spatial pattern. I'd rather be at my home. I'd rather be at my job. I'd rather be at my favorite fishing hole. That's spatial. Could be topical because of the kinds of places I'd rather be. I'd rather be on vacation. I'd rather be working. So there's an activity that I would like to do. That would be a different way of developing that topic. Genius is 1% inspiration, 99% perspiration. Give me examples of this. How have we seen this play out in the lives of different people? And that would be chronological, it could be spatial, it could be topical, depending on if you look at when the people existed, where they existed, or who they were. All animals are equal. Some animals are more equal than others. This might be a good agree, disagree. Show both sides of the issue. This might be one that you develop to say this is right, and that's a problem. Let's talk about the problem, then later let's talk about the solution. Or maybe this used to be a problem. Let's talk about how it was a problem and how it was solved. That would be problem solution informative rather than persuasive. So those are some of the things we would talk about in the class.